I apologize. I am sorry. I am remorseful. It's a good start for Rosh Hashanah, isn't it? And looking at Nellie, I know that I mean it, and I hope she knows it as well. I forced her to play the clavinova last week, and she wasn't too chuffed. May this be the time when we can say sorry and may it be accepted as well. Yitzhak Leib Peretz, from Poland, who was born in 1852 and died in 1915, better known as I.L. Peretz in the English-speaking world, was one of the most important classical Yiddish writers. His plays and writings remain influential in secular, cultural Yiddishist circles, especially around New York City, but I believe there's a little circle in London as well. Just as they are not rejected in Hasidic circles. Perhaps that is because he was a true universalist, able to appreciate the nuance of variant living, societies and sects of the one people, the people of Israel. Whilst raised in a traditional household, aged 15, he was said to have embraced the Haskalah, the Jewish Enlightenment movement of his age. Whilst others sided wholeheartedly with those of the Russian Revolution of 1905, Peretz was cautious. He witnessed pogroms that excluded Jews from the universalistic ideal of socialism, a scenario sadly echoed in contemporary politics. Peretz straddled worlds, but wrote romantically of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah among our Hasidic Jews is always a joyous festival. We are not frightened of the day of judgment. We know that we stand not in the presence of an alien overlord, but of our Father. Our Father in heaven judges us. So we take a drink and we dance at our prayers. What did I.L. Peretz mean by that? Unequivocal joy at what level did the Hasidim drink and dance? I'm not too sure we'd quite get away with it with you lot in Watford, but I know those of you who might be watching at home, I don't know, we can't see you, so you can do what you wish. Did some drink a toast to their righteous ways, such that they had no concern that their Father in heaven would grant them a marvelous year ahead? The sober voice of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, calls out, "There is no one on earth who only does good, never sins." Are there some who are deluded? Did others drink and dance to gain a moment of joy to allay the melancholy and fear? They were realists who saw the writing on the wall for their families and community. Others still, as we have romantically learnt of them, naive, innocent, living within a narrow sphere of their street or marketplace, or as wide as it went, a shtetl. Today, living in the luxurious aegis of the developed world, we call that living in the moment. Less than a century ago, in less salubrious surroundings and a more forbidding age, Peretz and contemporary Yiddish writers saw ancestors, whilst perceiving threat and peril lurking in their habitat, drinking and dancing in joy. For simple, righteous people, Jews no less, their God would ensure their salvation, if not in this life, in the world to come. So why did I begin by apologizing? For whatever of the aforementioned reasons or as yet unmentioned explanations, let us drink and dance in time with our Hasidic fellows, undoubtedly so pious that they had already acknowledged during Elul their ways to correct, their sins, and planned the rounds of apologies they would make to those they had wronged in the 10 days towards atonement. Mea culpa. I believe in previous years I have done you a disservice. The faithful of Erev Rosh Hashanah, the relatively few who show in shul this evening, and through the boxed set of worship services over the days of awe. In the past, I provided a soaring, one might say joyous, although we did not necessarily drink and dance, spiritual lift on Erev Rosh Hashanah to the days, an injustice to the awe of the moment. Whilst others feast and celebrate at home, a tradition of import, we perhaps come for serious purpose, not mere duty, but a meaningful obligation. Our true celebration is at Ne'ilah, at the closing of the gates when we perceive the beauty and the joy that God has granted atonement. Rabbi Leah and I have felt over time the change in our mood as a congregation, and so have slightly altered the liturgical order this year to reflect and remain at the joy of that time, raising a becher, a glass or goblet at Havdalah, and if you wish, to dance with us. But tonight, may we feel the kavod, the honor, the weight and burden of being the representatives of our people, to consider the severity of our deeds. Our deeds. The emissaries of our people pray the liturgy, pray the prayers of the days of awe, in the plural rather than in the singular. What defines those I recently heard hailed as the voice of today's generations are expressions of anxiety, mental fragility and loneliness. I've talked before about how we have perhaps been living through a golden age in Anglo Jewry, perhaps even for global Jewry. Living in a time of uncertainty, the day-to-day reality is that we are amongst some of the most fortunate on the planet. Lack of expectation, though, creates nervousness, and Jews particularly feel the weight of our circular history, perhaps amplifying such trepidation. All these thoughts and more do we consider in all seriousness as we humble ourselves, not to the point of insignificance, but in service of God, a reality in our lives, in our world, in our language and deed, that in every generation has provided Jewish life with meaning, purpose, and hope. Having begun these thoughts with such an Ashkenazi bias, let me conclude in the soaring veracity of Sepharad, of Spain. Sometimes we get lost in the verbosity of the liturgy. Yet let us launch our days of awe in the lyricism, purity of thought, and delicate style of a lesser-known Spanish poet of the Golden Age. For the grave yet sincere expression seems appropriate for our age, of a liminal moment, a time in between, that Rabbi Leah will speak more of tomorrow. You may have heard of Ibn Gaviro and Yehuda Halevi, but not of the late 11th century Saragossan poet and grammarian Levi ben Yaakov, or reflecting his era more appropriately, Levi ibn al-Taban. Whilst little is known of him, mainly because for millennia the majority of the poems were attributed to his aforementioned contemporaries, his piyutim were popular among North African Jews. Collated in the 1960s by Ban Pages, a number were included in this beautiful collection edited by my teacher, Dr. Jeremy Schonfield, of human Hebrew poems and translations, by Raphael Lowy. I conclude with these serious yet soaring words, for we who are here on Erev Rosh Hashanah deserve such beauty. Eternal, who in heaven dwellest, who is there can stand, all confidence, when thou dost rise to try all creatures, held to thine assize, judging as one body and soul, who dare utter one word in their defence? Shouldst thou mark each offence? Eternal, who could stand as bold as brass before thee, whose existence no time measure tracks? With mercy judge, nor wield the headman's axe, through giant millstones fold no pepper pour. What weakling stands his ground in war, when knights at arms their ranks condense? Must thou mark each offence? Eternal, how shall one accused stand up in court, with answers that convince, when all by taints are touched, disloyal all? Afflicted, faint with self-reproach, 'tis better to say naught. Through right he turn or left, lest he be caught. East, west, thy right arm plex him thence. Must thou mark each offence? Tall, who may stand eternal, when upon thy throne of judgment thou dost sit, each deed to weigh, each action to assess. Eternal grants we may for sin, through thy concealing love atone. Thy master plan all trespass can condone. O rock, purposing penitence, whilst marking each offence. In these moments of all seriousness, may we be connected through time to our ancestors, throughout time, throughout Jewish history, of place, of culture. May we seek the words which speak to us, the representatives of the house of Israel, who choose to come here in meaningful obligation, to pray, to acknowledge the seriousness of these days of awe. Amen.